Badlands is a 1973 released crime drama directed by Terrence Malick.
Yeah, it stars Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek as sort of young lovers who, in South Dakota in 1959, sort of fall in love and go on a bit of a murder spree. So it's loosely based on the real life sort of murders committed by Charles Starkweather and his girlfriend Caril Fugate. In 1958. Yeah, it's similar to that, but yeah, very loosely based on those real life events. Martin Sheen's character Kit is, when we first meet him, he's a garbage man, picking up bins, chucking it in the back of a truck. And on his way home, he passes Sissy Spacek's house, sees her in the front yard.
Holly.
That's the name, yep. And takes a liking to her. They have a little walk down the street and a chat, and and he takes a shine to her and keeps coming around. And her father doesn't really approve. I mean, he is like 25 and she's like 15, so it's not really appropriate, to be honest.
No.
I mean, probably frowned on in those days, and certainly frowned on these days.
Frowned on these days, yeah.
So, and understandably. He tries to, as is a common theme for these sorts of films with young lovers, the parental figures try to pull them apart. Yeah, and it never ends well, does it, for those parents, which it doesn't here. Then they head off out on the road. And Kit, while he seems nice at first, he's clearly a bit of a psycho. And gets his hands on a gun and uses it whenever someone gets on his nerves, to be honest, or gets in his way of what he wants to do, which is kind of just whatever he wants, really. Yeah, he looks a bit like James Dean, which is why Holly, I think, takes a shine to him in the first place, even though he's a little bit creepy. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, it's sort of the classic Midwest America, lots of gorgeous-looking vistas and dusty plains, and log cabins and that sort of thing.
I saw this when I was 18. My mum had always been a huge fan of this film, and on my 18th birthday she gave me this and said, "There you go." And I was blown away by it. I was just completely mesmerised by the film. I think it's we've done other films, take back to maybe things like just recently My Private Idaho and even Made in Britain. These are kind of these lost youths of society. They get kind of. I mean, in this case, he's probably can't read or write very much. He's come from quite the wrong side of the tracks, and he obviously follows a dark past. For some reason, cinema likes violence. That's the interesting thing. But I'm not quite sure why violence is such a bit. Why does cinema love violence so much? I think it's a conversation that has been had numerous times, and will continue to have because people will carry on making violent films whether you like them or not. And this is just one of them.
Well, I think most people, in day-to-day life aren't violent.
Well, no, they're not like
but,
that. But
we all have that sort of primal instinct within us.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to see that sort of thing, enacted on screen, I guess satisfies that sort of primal need. Without having to do it yourself.
Yeah, and one thing, so this film obviously is about a real-life case, Charlie Starkweather, and I have seen interviews with the cast of Badlands, and they were saying how, I think Charlie Starkweather was like almost one of the first, well, he was a spree killer as opposed to a serial killer, although they do speak about him as a serial killer, and they say that it was kind of one of the ones that really made people sit up, and they were like, oh, there is this dark underbelly of society. And of course, media start taking these things on board. And yes, there is that link to James Dean. And I think a lot of people, I think they were saying that, it's in the 50s, obviously you had Hollywood. Hollywood was very big. The image of someone, that kind of famous idol, that a normal person can go and do these horrific things. I think that was interesting. But I think what I personally like about this film is that the violence is almost in the background. The film is more about the two characters, and Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, and their lives together. And a lot of it is actually quite playful. I mean, the whole film I find is quite innocent and a bit naive. They're both a bit naive, specifically Sissy Spacek's character. But then you do have this kind of this background of violence and murder, which is obviously shocking. And so I like the kind of the juxtaposition between the playfulness and the innocence, or lost innocence, and then the violence of it too. And kind of one reason I've always liked this film. The film has a voiceover by Sissy Spacek, and it's a voiceover I really like. I mean, some people say that you shouldn't do voiceovers in cinema. You shouldn't drive the plot. You shouldn't tell the plot with your voiceover, and sometimes that can be a bit annoying. What I like about Sissy Spacek's or Holly's voiceover is that she's just her thoughts.
Yeah, it's like an internal monologue, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And there's some really interesting things, and there's one in there where she speaks about, she often thinks about the boy she might meet and marry. Is he out there? Is he thinking about her? And the film's very philosophical, and Terrence Malick, I think his films are very philosophical. And I think the performances, I love good acting in films, and I can really kind of sink my teeth into a good character. And Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, and Warren Oates, who's like a legend to me. He's just such a didn't turn up in a huge amount of films because he died quite young, died in the early 80s. But three really great actors who really kind of bring everything. And this was like Martin Sheen's standout role. I mean, I think it was his first big role. He'd been doing TV and things like that, and Terrence Malick originally offered it to him, and when he read it, he was like, "This is amazing, but I'm too old for this part." And Terrence Malick was like, "Well, I'm gonna raise the age, so you would be perfect for it." And I think it kind of gave him his career, because obviously he went and did Apocalypse Now, and has had a really great career too. Sissy Spacek too. She was very young when she did this, and I think she is from Texas, or I think she's from Texas, and so she obviously has that accent. So, but had you seen this before?
I hadn't. No, I mean, obviously I was aware of it, and I'd wanted to see it for a long time. I don't know. I just never had. It's not something that's shown on TV that often anymore.
No.
But no, I was certainly aware of it, and obviously, it's had influences on various things. I think obviously in the music.
Well, you've got True Romance, of course.
Yeah, the Hans Zimmer composed. Well, I think it's not actually the same piece, but it sounds almost identical.
So obviously True Romance used. So it's Carl Orff made Gassenhauer, something.
Yeah. Sort of a magical sort of.
It's very magical, playful. Again, the music's quite playful with like this strange, playful music with this dark undertone of violence under there as well. And yes, True Romance famously used.
I don't know if it was the same piece or whether it was just very, very similar. Yeah, it almost sounds identical. But so if you've seen that, obviously the music will feel familiar. But no, I hadn't seen it before, and I could understand why you like it. It didn't blow me away, but I don't know if I'd seen it a long time ago. It might have done, but it certainly looks gorgeous, and the acting. I mean, I think for me it took a little while to get going, maybe. But I still didn't really feel like I knew the characters that well. Obviously, well, apart from Holly being naive and Kit being a bit creepy, was all I could get from them. But no, as it progressed, I got into it, and I think there are a lot of films like this around. Obviously, you've got Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh yeah,
and True Romance and Natural Born Killers. So there's California. There's lots of films like this. So maybe having seen all of those, it didn't feel particularly fresh.
No.
Because it's had a lot of imitators along the way. But no, I mean, it is gorgeous to look at. The acting is top drawer. And I did enjoy it. But not as much as you.
No, that's fine.
But no, it was good. But no, like I said, not. I don't think I've seen anything else of Terrence Malick. It's only that now and Thin Red Line. Did nothing for me. So whether any of his other films are doing anything for me, I don't know. I'd be welcome to try.
I think it's the reason my mum very much likes kind of films that, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's almost like they have when I say spiritual, I don't mean spiritual as in a religious sense or as in but more kind of just, they feel very human. There's another, Peter Weir, the Australian filmmaker, he makes films quite similar. They almost kind of, I suppose they ask questions, and I suppose there's a bit of philosophical questioning going on in there, and they kind of look deeper into the souls of people. And I find Terrence Malick and Peter Weir quite similar. I also find them quite warm filmmakers. I have an interesting thing with some films. So Stanley Kubrick, for instance, I find him a very cold filmmaker. He makes great films, but they come across, they're a bit cold.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
So The Shining and Full Metal Jacket and Paths of Glory, they feel quite cold films, whereas these guys, they just, to me, feel quite warm, and I can get with them. I sit with these guys more than Kubrick.
Right.
I love Kubrick films, but I would prefer to watch something like this. And I don't mean just they're warm because there's the sun in the distance, but as
No, I
something
know what you
in-
mean.
in the film itself, which is quite magical. And I love the way this is shot. I think there's some really the whole stuff in the treehouse when they go off and they kind of hide themselves away from
Yeah,
authorities
I wasn't
on the
expecting
run,
that.
which is really playful. And it's also really interesting to watch if you look at obviously Martin Sheen's son. So Martin Sheen's sons, Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, are actually in the film. There's a scene kind of midway where Holly looks out of her window and you see these two boys playing in the street. They are Martin Sheen's two famous sons. And in fact, I've always found Emilio Estevez to be a lot like, although Charlie Sheen looks a lot like his father, Emilio Estevez in the way he acts. There's a scene where Martin Sheen runs through the woods, and the way he runs is almost identical to the way Emilio Estevez does a running scene in Breakfast Club.
Right.
He does this kind of weird. I think they've just smoked a joint, then they go a bit crazy, and he's like running around the library, and it's very similar. The run is very similar, and I see a lot of Emilio Estevez in Martin Sheen, and I've always enjoyed Martin Sheen's performances. There's that weird thing Martin Sheen does in this with his coat. He always puts that in his movies. I think he injured his shoulder.
Right.
And so he's got like a dislocated shoulder. So he's able to put his coat on in a weird way.
All right.
He puts it over his head. I'll stick a clip over it.
Okay.
You'll see it. It happens a couple of times in the movie.
Right.
And I think he does it in other films. It's like his go-to thing.
His unique coat putting on method.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Which is weird. But I love his performance in this. I think kind of following him is really interesting. There's a really I find quite a haunting scene in the film where he gets two people and he puts them down into like this bunker under the ground, and he closes it up and you think he's going to let them go, and he just kind of sticks the gun down, bang bang, and you don't know if they've been killed or anything, and he's just so like free about it. He just doesn't care whatsoever, and I think that's why he's such a ruthless killer. We can also talk about, I obviously have it on DVD, we'll have it on Blu-ray, had it on DVD, and now I have it on Blu-ray because Criterion obviously have had this out in America for a long time.
Yep.
And then recently they released it over here in the UK, so you don't have to have a region A. He knows, I don't. And it's a really nice set. There's not a huge amount of stuff on it. There's a really nice documentary featuring Martin Sheen, Sissy Spacek, and the production designer Jack Fisk. It's really interesting actually. And Jack Fisk married Sissy Spacek, and they met on this film. And he started life working with people like Roger Corman, and he's kind of a real art of how he dresses the sets. And I think he talks about kind of following the Stanislavski, that kind of the method acting.
Yeah.
So he'll literally like put things in the act, even if you don't see it on film, he will put things in the drawers of things to really kind of get into the minds of these characters. Some people find that a bit much, but I think it works. He worked on There Will Be Blood, and that film obviously looks amazing as well. And it's not just this was amazing about film. It's not just the director or the actors. It's all the production designers and the costume designers, and they all bring these films together. And some cases you just are startled by it. So
it does have a little an episode of an American TV show, that talks about different crimes, and it talks about the real, about Charles Starkweather.
It does, yes. I haven't watched that yet. Did you watch that?
I started to, yeah.
Right,
but
okay.
Then one of my children got out of bed, so I stopped watching it.
And there's a booklet in there which has some obviously a few essays. Criterion are famous for putting lots of essays and things like that about the film in there, and there's some nice photographs in there too. I mean, it looks beautiful. Criterion, as Arrow and all those guys, they tend to do pretty amazing jobs with these films. So so if you're in the UK, you can now buy that on Blu-ray. I just got it from Amazon. Wasn't too horrendous price-wise. So that was Badlands, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Yep, hit the subscribe button up there if you've enjoyed what you've watched, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on Twitter and Facebook, and join us next week for another one.